The story opens quietly, almost the way a soft morning drapes itself over the city before anyone realizes the sun has already risen. Her name was Elena Morgan, 29 years old, an office manager in a tall glass building on Madison Avenue in New York City. To most people, Elena looked like someone who had her life perfectly arranged, organized, reliable, calm on the outside. But inside, she was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind of tired that felt woven into her routine. Her alarms, her commute, her emails, her perfectly labeled folders, all of it felt as though it belonged to a different version of her, a version that had never paused long enough to ask why she felt a quiet ache in her chest every morning on the 6 train to Midtown. Elena had always loved travel. It wasn't something she talked about much. Too many people dismissed it as impractical daydreaming. But tucked between her winter coats in the closet, she kept a box labeled Someday. Inside, a few postcards, a tiny spiral notebook of sketches from college, and a list titled Places My Heart Wants Before My Mind Understands Why. At the top of the list, circled in faded blue ink, was Sedona, Arizona. Red rock canyons, spiritual vortexes, yoga retreats, and healing energy. Ideal for self-reflection and scenic hikes. Back then, she didn't even know what a vortex was. She had just seen pictures of cathedral-shaped rock towers glowing like embers at sunset, and her chest felt warm in a way she couldn't explain. Tonight, 10 years later, her chest felt warm again. It was a Thursday night. Elena sat at her small window table in her Upper West Side studio, sipping chamomile tea, listening to the soft hum of traffic on Amsterdam Avenue below. Her laptop glowed with yet another late-night spreadsheet she wasn't supposed to take home, but always did. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then something inside her softened. A thought, not loud, not dramatic, simply drifted into her mind the way a leaf drifts onto water. Maybe it's time. For the first time in years, she opened the box labeled Someday. The postcard on top was one she bought years ago from a gift shop in Chelsea before she even started working full-time. It showed a lone woman standing on a red canyon ridge at sunset. Her touch the edge of the card. Her heartbeat slowed. Something felt right. She opened a new browser tab and typed, "Flights from New York to Phoenix." Her breath caught when she saw one. A morning flight out of JFK, nonstop to Phoenix Sky Harbor International, leaving in 3 days. 3 days. She whispered to herself, the way one might whisper in a church or beneath a sky full of stars, Sedona. Just saying the name made her shoulders relax. She booked the ticket. She didn't tell anyone at work. She didn't tell her friends. She simply sent in a request for a week off, her first real vacation in almost 2 years, and shut her laptop. For the first time in months, she slept early, and she dreamed, not of deadlines or subway delays, but of sunlight, warming ancient red stone, of winding desert trails, and her own footsteps echoing softly in a canyon she had never seen but somehow recognized. Elena woke before her alarm. For a moment, she didn't know why her body felt lighter than usual, why her breath moved freely, like something inside her had finally unclenched. The soft winter gray light of early morning filtered through her thin curtains, painting her apartment in hushed tones. Then she remembered. Today, she was leaving. Not forever, not dramatically, just long enough to breathe differently, to see herself from a softer distance. New York mornings had their own rhythm. Even this early, she could hear someone rolling a heavy suitcase down the hallway outside her studio. Somewhere below, a bakery on 73rd Street clattered open its metal grate. A bus sighed at a stop on Broadway, releasing and gathering new passengers. Usually, these sounds blended into the everyday noise of her life. Today, they felt like a gentle farewell. She moved slowly, intentionally, as she got ready, almost like she was following a small ritual. She made her bed neatly, she watered the small pothos plant near the window, she placed a tiny note on her desk, "Be kind to yourself." Then she prepared her coffee, dark roast with a splash of oat milk, and drank it standing by the window, watching thin clouds drift above the buildings. She imagined Sedona's open sky waiting for her, wide and unhurried. Her suitcase was small, soft teal-colored, with a single sticker on the side that read, "Wander with intention." She packed it the night before. A breathable hiking jacket, 2 soft linen shirts, a pair of worn-in walking shoes, a lightweight journal, her favorite pen, a small travel-size lavender spray, and the postcard from the Someday box. She ran her fingers over the postcard one more time before tucking it carefully into the journal's back pocket. At 7:10 a.m., she locked her apartment door. The hallway light flickered softly, as if waving goodbye. Outside, the morning air carried the crisp scent of winter mixed with the comforting aroma of nearby coffee shops. She pulled her scarf a little closer around her neck and walked towards 72nd Street Station, the wheels of her suitcase ticking lightly against the sidewalk. On the subway platform, everything felt strangely slowed down, as if time were stretching to let her slip through without rushing. A man in a gray coat yawned into his coffee cup. A teenager tapped their foot to music only they could hear. A woman in scrubs leaned against a pillar, eyes closed for a moment of stolen rest. Elena stood among them, but inside she felt slightly apart, floating, like she was already between two worlds, New York and Sedona, routine and possibility. The one train arrived with a soft roar, brakes hissing as it slid to a stop. She stepped inside and found a seat near the window. As the train rattled south toward Penn Station, she watched the city blur past, mosaic tiles, tunnel walls, brief flashes of light, and the silhouettes of other passengers reflected faintly on the glass. Her mind drifted back to a memory from years ago, a version of herself sitting in a college library, looking at a photography book of national parks and whispering to her roommate, "One day, I'll go somewhere with giant red rocks and nothing else around me." Her roommate laughed at the time, teasing her for always dreaming, but it never left her. Today felt like that one day. At Penn Station, she transferred to the Long Island Railroad train headed toward Jamaica Station, and from there, she took the air train to JFK. Sign after sign pointed the way, and each one felt like an arrow, pulling her closer to something she needed more than she realized. The air train hummed softly as it glided above the morning traffic. The distant skyline of Manhattan shimmered under the pale winter sun, and Elena watched it fade slowly behind her. She whispered quietly, almost to herself, "Goodbye, for now." When she reached Terminal 4 at JFK, the airport was buzzing with its usual mixture of travelers, families huddled over suitcases, business travelers glancing quickly at their watches, couples holding hands, solo wanderers with eyes full of anticipation. Alana checked in, dropped off her luggage, and moved through security in a calm, steady rhythm. Nothing felt rushed, nothing felt heavy. Once she reached her gate, B-23, she sat in a seat by the window overlooking the tarmac. A large Boeing aircraft rested outside, its silver body catching the morning light like a calm, breathing creature. She felt something inside her soften again, A small wave of gratitude, a quiet understanding that she was doing the right thing. She opened her journal and wrote the first entry of her trip. Day 1. Leaving New York, I feel like something is unclenching in me, like my life has been a tight fist and today it finally opened. I don't know what Sedona will give me, but I feel ready to receive it. The boarding call flowed gently across the speakers, echoing through the wide sunlit gate area. Group 2, now boarding. She stood up, took a slow breath, and stepped into the line. With every step toward the plane, she felt lighter, as if she were walking out of the life she knew and into the life she had quietly been longing for. The interior of the plane was filled with that quiet, early morning hush, passengers settling into their seats, overhead bins clicking softly, flight attendants greeting with practiced but warm smiles. Elena found her seat, 21A, window, just as she had hoped. She slipped into the seat slowly, almost reverently, like stepping into a small cocoon of her own. Outside the window, ground crew moved across the tarmac with calm efficiency, their neon vests glowing in the sun. Elena buckled her seatbelt and rested her hand on the cool plastic of the armrest. Her heart beat with a gentle, steady excitement, not the sharp kind that feels like fear, but the softer kind that feels like leaning towards something beautiful. The woman seated beside her, somewhere in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a turquoise scarf, smiled kindly. "Headed somewhere warm?" she asked, adjusting her seatbelt. Elena nodded. "Sedona." "Oh." The woman's eyes softened, as if she understood something unspoken. That place has a way of giving people what they need, even if they don't know what that is yet. Elena felt a tiny chill run down her spine, but a good one, like someone had opened a... Elena felt a tiny chill run down her spine, but a good one, like someone had opened a window in her mind. "I hope so," she whispered. The captain's voice floated gently over the speakers, calm and steady, like the voice of a bedtime storyteller. "Good morning, folks. We're just about ready to depart for Phoenix. Estimated flight time is 5 hours and 27 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey." Elena settled deeper into her seat, letting the hum of the engines wrap around her like a soft blanket. As the plane began to taxi, she closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in deeply. This was real. She was really leaving New York behind, at least for a little while. The takeoff came with a smooth rush. The engines deepened, the runway blurred, and the plane lifted, weightless and sure, into the pale morning sky. Through the window, the city shrank. Bridges, rivers, grids of buildings becoming tiny shapes, softened by distance. Soon, the skyline of Manhattan emerged like a silver silhouette, drifting behind a veil of soft clouds. Elena watched until the city faded into hazy blue. Once the plane leveled out, a quiet stillness settled. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, a few passengers pulled blankets over themselves. The air felt cooler, gentler. Elena opened the window shade halfway. Below them, clouds stretched like a vast, endless sea, soft white dunes rolling in every direction. The sunlight spilled across them in a slow golden wash. She felt her breath deepen, her shoulders relax, her mind begin to drift, not in thought, but in a soft, floating awareness. The flight attendant came by with a warm smile. "Something to drink?" "Ginger ale, please," Elena said softly. The bubbles fizzed lightly against her tongue, refreshing and sweet. She took small sips, watching the clouds move slowly beneath the plane. She began writing again in her journal. Up here, above the noise, it feels like the world is holding its breath. New York feels distant, like a page I closed gently rather than tore away. I don't know what I'll find in Sedona, but maybe the not knowing is part of the journey.
After writing, she closed her journal and simply stared out the window. Hours slipped by in a dreamy rhythm. Clouds, sunlight, the quiet hum of the engines. Time in the sky moves strangely, she thought. It stretches and folds, becoming soft, almost liquid. You feel suspended not just in air, but in thought itself. At one point, she drifted into a light sleep, the kind that feels like floating. She dreamed of red canyons bathed in golden light. She dreamed of standing alone on a ridge, her hand resting against warm stone. She dreamed of wind weaving through her hair, carrying whispers she couldn't quite understand. When she opened her eyes again, the plane was beginning its gradual descent. The captain's voice returned, warm and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our approach into Phoenix. Weather is clear, sunny, with temperatures around 72 degrees. Welcome to Arizona." Elena lifted the window shade fully. The sight stole her breath. The landscape below was nothing like New York. Instead of water and concrete, she saw wide desert plains, earth colored in deep ochre and pale gold, mountains rising like ancient guardians, dry riverbeds forming delicate lines across the ground. The plane dipped lower, giving her an even clearer view. Arizona looked like a painting made of sunlight. Her heart beat in a quiet rhythm of awe. Beside her, the woman with the turquoise scarf leaned toward the window softly. "You'll love Sedona. There's something peaceful there, like time slows just enough for you to find yourself." Elena didn't know what to say. She only nodded. The wheels touched down with a soft thump, and the plane rolled smoothly along the runway, slowing as palm trees swayed gently in the warm desert wind outside. Her journey had begun the moment she left New York, but now, as she stepped onto land she had never walked before, she felt it truly begin. She was here. Arizona, the doorway to red rocks, vortexes, and quiet healing. A place where the past might settle and the future might gently take shape.
The moment Elena stepped off the plane, a soft wave of warm, dry air touched her skin. So different from New York's winter chill. It felt like someone had draped a gentle, sun-warmed blanket over her shoulders. The interior of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport was bright, modern, and spacious. Sunlight streamed in through wide glass windows, reflecting off polished floors and warm glimmers. Travelers moved with an easy, unhurried rhythm, very unlike the brisk, purposeful pace of JFK. Elena followed the signs toward baggage claim, each step feeling lighter than the last. She paused near a large mural of desert landscapes, saguaro cacti, wide open skies, golden sunsets. Something about it made her inhale deeply, a subtle breath of recognition, as if her spirit had been here before, even if her body had not. She retrieved her teal suitcase from Carousel 3 and then headed toward the rental car center using the airport's PHX SkyTrain. The ride was smooth and almost silent, gliding over sunlit views of the desert city below. Palm trees, terracotta rooftops, and distant mountain silhouettes. At the rental counter, she picked up a silver Toyota RAV4, small, reliable, the kind of car that felt perfect for winding desert roads. When she slid into the driver's seat and closed the door, a quiet settled around her, like stepping into a private sanctuary. She rested her hands on the steering wheel, exhaled slowly, smiled. She typed her destination into the GPS. Sedona, Arizona, via I-17 North. Distance, 119 miles. Estimated drive, 1 hour 55 minutes. Her heart fluttered. "Let's go," she whispered, turning the key. The car eased out of the rental lot and merged onto the highway. Soon, Phoenix unfolded around her in warm, sun-drenched patterns.
flat desert neighborhoods, shopping plazas, and long stretches of open road lined with dusty shrubs and towering saguaros. The city slowly thinned, giving way to sprawling desert landscapes. Sand-colored earth stretched as far as she could see, dotted with cacti that stood like ancient guardians. The sky was a vast, unbroken blue, so wide it felt like it could hold all her thoughts without letting any of them spill. The hum of the road was soothing, hypnotic. The car moved with a steady rhythm, almost like breathing. Up ahead, the mountains began to rise, soft at first, pale and distant, then gradually sharper and closer. The desert changed colors as miles passed beneath her wheels, from sandy gold to sun-baked copper to deep rust. Alana rolled the window down a little. Warm air brushed her cheeks, carrying the scent of dust and sun. She felt something loosen inside her. For a long while, she didn't think of work or responsibilities or anything heavy. Instead, she simply watched. A hawk soared above the highway, gliding effortlessly in wide arcs. A cluster of wildflowers, tiny, brave, violet-colored, peeked from between rocks. Far ahead, the mountain ridges shimmered in the heat haze, like mirages shifting from one shape to another. Around Black Canyon City, she pulled into a scenic overlook. She stepped out of the car and let the desert air wrap around her fully this time. It was warm, calm, and ancient. The horizon stretched endlessly. The wind whispered gently across the open land. Even the sound of passing cars felt muted, respectful. She took out her journal and wrote, "The desert feels like silence made into a place, like it holds space for you to empty yourself without judgment. Everything here is wide, patient, breathing. Maybe I'll learn to breathe like this too." After a few minutes of quiet stillness, she got back into the car and continued north. Soon, the landscape around her changed again. The cliffs grew taller, richer in color, deep oranges and reds layered like old stories pressed into stone. Pine trees began appearing along the slopes, a surprising, soothing shift from the desert shrubs and cacti. The GPS announced softly, "Continue on I-17 north for 22 miles." But her eyes were already widening. Because there, rising in the distance, were the first hints of Sedona's famous red rock formations, massive, timeless, glowing like embers under the bright Arizona sun. Her breath caught. She slowed slightly, as though her body needed time to take in what her eyes were seeing. The rocks were unlike anything she had ever imagined, towering shapes carved by wind and patience, their edges softened by centuries of weather and light. Each formation felt like a quiet guardian. Each one seemed to carry a presence, a stillness, a knowing. As she exited onto State Route 17, the Red Rock Scenic Byway, the full majesty of Sedona came into view. The road curved gently through canyons and valleys, each bend revealing new formations, Bell Rock, Kurthouse Butte, Cathedral Rock rising like illuminated temples. Red, gold, crimson. Earth glowing beneath sky. Elena's hands tightened slightly around the steering wheel, not out of fear, but reverence. Tears pricked the edges of her vision without warning. How can a place feel like a memory? How can somewhere I've never been feel like home? When she finally entered the town of Sedona, she felt a soft shift in the air. Quieter, gentler, almost vibrational. The town was lined with small boutiques, art galleries, cafes with open patios, and signs for yoga studios and healing centers. Everything felt warm and welcoming. Her hotel was on the quieter edge of town, Arabella Hotel Sedona, surrounded by red rocks and desert plants. When she pulled into the parking lot, the late afternoon sunlight painted the canyons in deep gold. The air smelled faintly of juniper and sun-warmed earth. Inside the lobby, soft music played, and the receptionist grinned sun-warmed earth. Inside the lobby, soft music played, and the receptionist greeted her with a smile that felt genuinely warm. "Welcome to Arabella," the woman said. "You picked a beautiful time to be here." Elena nodded, still slightly breathless from the drive. "I can already tell." She received her room key, room 243, second floor, facing the red rocks, and walked along the open-air hallway, rolling her suitcase behind her. When she reached her door and stepped inside, she paused. The room was simple but comforting. A large bed with white linens, soft desert-tone decor, and a sliding glass door that opened onto a small balcony overlooking the glowing canyon cliffs. Elena stepped onto the balcony slowly. The world outside was silent except for the faint sound of wind moving between rocks. The cliffs radiated warm colors, rust, rose, copper, like living sculptures shaped by time. She placed her palms lightly on the balcony railing, took a long, slow breath, closed her eyes. The air felt different here, gentler, closer, as if something in Sedona was quietly whispering, "You are safe now. You can rest. You can begin again."
Elena stood on her balcony longer than she realized, long enough for the sun to dip lower in the sky, long enough for the warm colors of the canyon to melt into deeper shades of gold, amber, and soft red. The quiet here wasn't empty. It was full of space, full of breath, full of something she could only describe as presence. She unpacked slowly, mindfully, setting her things where they felt right. Her journal on the bedside table, her favorite pen beside it, her lavender spray near the pillow, the postcard tucked gently between the hotel's welcome pamphlets. Then she changed into comfortable clothes, soft leggings, a loose white shirt, and a light cardigan. She wasn't hungry enough for a full dinner, but her body wanted something warm, grounding, earthy. She walked down to the hotel lobby, where a friendly front desk staff member greeted her with a warm smile. "First time in Sedona?" he asked, recognizing the fresh, gentle awe in her expression. "Yes," she replied softly, "and I already feel something. I'm not sure what." He chuckled quietly. "That's normal here. Sedona has a way of meeting you exactly where you are." He recommended a cozy place nearby called the Secret Garden Cafe, only a few minutes' walk away in the Tlaquepaque Arts Village. Elena thanked him and stepped outside. The air was cooler now, the evening breeze brushing gently across her skin. The sky was shifting into dusky hues, soft lavender near the horizon, deep blue overhead. Shadows stretched long and peaceful across the desert ground. She walked slowly toward Tlaquepaque, guided by warm hanging lanterns along the path. The village felt like a quiet dream. Spanish-style courtyards, stone archways draped in vines, fountains bubbling softly, and little artisan shops closed for the day, their windows glowing faintly with leftover sunlight. At the cafe, she found a small outdoor table tucked beneath a tree whose branches were strung with tiny, warm lights. A soft instrumental guitar melody drifted from somewhere nearby. She ordered a bowl of butternut squash soup and a warm herbal tea. When the soup arrived, creamy, golden orange, lightly spiced, she took a slow, grateful spoonful. The flavors were comforting, grounding, like warmth settling into her chest. It was simple. It was enough. It was exactly what she needed. After dinner, she took her time walking back to the hotel.
The sky had deepened into the richest navy. Above her, the stars blinked clearly, so many more than she ever saw through the haze of New York's city lights. A thin crescent moon hung low, resting gently above the silhouette of the red rock cliffs. Back in her room, she turned off the main lights, leaving only the warm bedside lamp on. Then she returned to her balcony, drawn to the quiet outside the way one is drawn to a deep breath after holding it too long. The cliffs were different now. Their reds had softened into muted purples and deep, velvety shadows. The night wrapped them in a silent embrace, but their presence remained strong, steady, almost protective. Elena sat on the balcony chair, pulled the light blanket over her lap, and let herself drift. Far off, she heard a lone owl calling from somewhere in the darkness. A soft wind carried the faint scent of juniper. The world felt suspended and calm. She whispered into the night, "I didn't know a place could feel like this." Then, settling deeper into the cushion, she let her thoughts wander gently, drifting between past memories and present stillness. She thought of her old routine back in New York, the crowded subway, the blinking computer screens, the endless emails, the pressure she carried in her shoulders every single day. It felt far away now. Not gone, but softened like something viewed through fog. She remembered her fictional past self, too, the girl she used to imagine during college, the one who would travel alone, write stories from mountaintops, fall asleep under desert skies. She always admired that version of herself, always wondered if she'd ever meet her in real life. And now, she thought softly, maybe I'm beginning to. She opened her journal and wrote, "Tonight the rocks feel alive, not moving, not speaking, just present, like quiet companions who understand. I feel held here. I feel seen in a way I didn't expect. My mind feels quiet. My chest feels light." She paused, tapped the pen lightly on the paper, and continued. "I think something in me has begun to shift, maybe just a little, but that's enough for now." After writing, she sprayed a little lavender on her wrists. The scent blended perfectly with the desert breeze, calming, grounding, soothing. She went inside, drew the curtains, but left them open enough to let the moonlight in, and settled into the hotel bed. The sheets were cool and crisp against her skin. As she lay there, she could feel the canyon's presence even with her eyes closed, steady, ancient, calm. Her breath slowed, her body softened, her thoughts unwound gently one by one. And as she drifted into sleep, a quiet promise seemed to whisper through the silent Sedona night. Rest now. Tomorrow, the desert will show you more. Elena woke before the sun, not to an alarm, not to noise, but to an unfamiliar, peaceful stillness, like the quiet itself had nudged her awake. Her hotel room was dim, painted in soft blue shadows. Through the slight opening in the curtains, she saw a pale, pre-dawn glow resting over the red rock cliffs. They looked like silent giants waiting for the day to unfold. She stretched slowly beneath the soft sheets, feeling the warmth in her muscles. Her mind felt strangely clear. No rush, no emails waiting, no subway trains running beneath her feet, just the quiet hum of Sedona's early morning. She rose quietly, opened the curtains wider, and stepped onto the balcony. The air was chilly, crisp desert cold that filled her lungs and awakened her senses. The rocks were still dark, silhouettes against the slowly brightening sky. The colors were beginning to change, almost imperceptibly. Deep purple, soft maroon, hints of rose gold brushing their edges. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. The scent of juniper, the faint mineral smell of warm stone, a cool breeze that carried a quiet promise of clarity. For a moment she simply breathed, nothing else. When she went back inside, she prepared herself for the day with slow, mindful movements. She washed her face with cool water, tied her hair into a loose braid, put on her comfortable hiking leggings, layered a soft tee, a light fleece, and her windbreaker. She laced her worn-in trail shoes. She packed her small day bag, a refillable water bottle, a granola bar, sunscreen, her journal, a small box of tissues, and the lavender spray, her tiny comfort from home. Then she checked the time. 6:18 a.m. Perfect for sunrise. Before leaving, she whispered a small intention into the quiet room. Let today show me something I need to see. Outside, Sedona was wrapped in cool morning stillness. Only a few other early risers were out, someone walking a dog, another person sitting on a bench with a steaming cup of coffee. The world was slow, gentle, almost dreamlike. Elena drove the short distance to Bell Rock Trailhead. Along State Route 179, the sky continued brightening, revealing more and more of the magnificent rock formations. Bell Rock stood tall and powerful, its layered shape glowing with the very first touches of sunlight. When she parked, only 3 other cars dotted the gravel lot. She stepped out, zipped her jacket against the chill, and looked up. Bell Rock was breathtaking, massive, grounded, ancient, like it had been waiting for her. The trail began easily, a wide sandy path winding through low desert shrubs and clusters of prickly pear cacti. The air smelled lightly of warm earth and sage. Birds fluttered between the bushes, calling softly to one another in the early light. As she walked, the sun slowly rose above the horizon, casting long rays of golden light across the desert. The red rocks glowed deeper, warmer, almost illuminated from within. Elena moved at a slow, meditative pace. Each step felt intentional, grounding. The crunch of gravel under her shoes was rhythmic, soothing. She placed one hand lightly on her chest and breathed. In, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3. Her breath matched her steps. Her steps matched her heartbeat. Everything felt aligned. As she neared the base of Bell Rock, the energy shifted subtly, like the air thickened, warmed, vibrated gently. She paused, feeling that subtle hum inside her bones. This was why people called it a vortex site. Not a whirlpool, not something dramatic. Just a place where the earth felt amplified, more present, more alive. She rested her hand against the warm stone, closed her eyes. She rested her hand against the warm stone, closed her eyes, let the silence sink into her heart. And for a moment, she felt something inside loosen, like a knot gently beginning to untangle. She climbed a little higher, not to the top, but to a wide, flat ledge that offered a sweeping view of the valley below. The morning sun painted everything in gold: the curves of the canyon, the distant lines of the cliffs, the soft, shadowed valleys between them. She sat cross-legged on the rock, letting its warmth seep upward into her legs. Here, the silence was deeper. Not empty, alive with subtle sounds. The whisper of wind brushing the stone, a bird calling in the distance, a faint, almost musical hum in the air. Elena opened her journal and wrote, "Bell Rock feels like a soft pulse beneath my feet, like the earth is breathing slowly, inviting me to breathe with it. There's a peace here I couldn't have imagined, not loud or overwhelming, just steady and present." She paused, then added, "I think I needed a place that doesn't ask anything from me, a place that simply lets me be." When she finished writing, a breeze curled gently around her, lifting a strand of her hair and brushing it softly against her cheek. She smiled, small, quiet, sincere. She stayed there for a long time, just being, watching the sun rise higher, watching shadows shrink and stretch, watching the colors shift from cool morning hues to warm desert gold. After a while, she stood slowly, brushed dust from her leggings, and began making her way down the trail. She walked lightly, barefoot in spirit, even if her shoes stayed on. Her heart felt clearer, her mind quieter, her breath deeper. At the trailhead, she turned for one last look at Bell Rock. "Thank you," she whispered softly. The red rock glowed back at her, warm and steady in the morning sun.
The day began softly, like a page turning itself. Lena woke before sunrise, wrapped in the warm sheets of her small room at El Portal Sedona Hotel. A faint orange glow pressed delicately through the curtains, hinting at morning's gentle arrival. She stayed still for a moment, listening to the quiet, a peaceful desert kind of quiet, where the air seems to breathe slower than anywhere else. She stretched, feeling the pleasant ache in her legs from yesterday's hike to Cathedral Rock. There was something deeply grounding about waking up in Sedona, almost as if the land whispered, "You're safe. You're held. Take your time." And she did. She brewed the small herbal tea packet left on the nightstand, inhaling the steam of chamomile and lemongrass. She sipped slowly, letting her thoughts drift freely. She wrote a few lines in her travel journal. "Woke up feeling calmer than I have in months. Maybe the desert is teaching me to breathe again. Today, I want to follow a river. Maybe feel like something is guiding me forward." When she closed her journal, her heart felt lighter. The Oak Creek Path. Lena took a short Uber ride to Red Rock Crossing, one of Sedona's most beloved peaceful spots. As soon as she stepped out, she felt the cool shade of cottonwood trees and heard the gentle murmur of Oak Creek flowing like a soft, endless lullaby. A thin dirt trail led her alongside the water. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth and sun-warmed stone. The creek reflected slices of sky, shifting from silver to turquoise to deep green.
Lena walked slowly, almost meditatively, imagining that the river held all of Sedona's old stories, of travelers searching for clarity, of seekers meditating on smooth boulders, of quiet moments like this one. She removed her shoes and stepped into the creek, letting the cold water wrap around her ankles. Goosebumps rose instantly, yet she smiled. It felt real, grounding, purifying. She whispered to herself, "Let go. Let go of everything that doesn't belong to me anymore." The water carried her whisper away, gently. A chance encounter. Further down the trail, Lena saw an older woman sitting cross-legged near the water, her long white hair gathered in a loose braid. She looked like someone who lived between the worlds, half grounded, half floating. The woman opened her eyes and smiled warmly. "Morning, traveler." Lena returned a smile. "Morning." "You're carrying a lot," she said softly, not unkindly. Lena blinked, surprised at how easily she felt seen here in Sedona. "I'm trying to release some things," she admitted. The woman nodded. "This is a good place for that. The river listens." They talked gently for a few minutes. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. Just two humans sharing a peaceful morning by the water. Before she left, the woman said, "Follow the river until the rocks turn red again. Sit there for a while. You'll feel something shift." Lena didn't question it. She simply thanked her and continued her walk. The Red Rock Ledge. The trail eventually opened into a clearing where the creek broadened and the red rocks rose like ancient watchtowers. Lena climbed onto a warm, flat ledge overlooking the water. She sat cross-legged and closed her eyes. The sun rested on her skin, gentle and golden. The breeze carried the faint scent of sage. Her mind softened, her breath blurred into stillness. She drifted into that peaceful inner space, the one Sedona had been pulling her toward since the moment she arrived. Her thoughts took shape. Her job in New York, steady but draining. Her apartment, small but lonely. Her dreams, the ones she kept shelving, waiting for a better time. Here, on this red rock ledge, she felt the truth settle quietly into her chest. Maybe the better time is now. A lump formed in her throat, but it didn't hurt. It felt freeing. She wrote again in her journal, "I think I want a different life. Something slower. Something that breathes. I don't know what it looks like yet, but Sedona is making me believe it's possible." The sunset that stayed with her. As evening approached, Lena headed toward Airport Mesa, one of Sedona's most iconic sunset points. She joined a small group of travelers, all waiting silently for the sky's performance. The sun dipped lower and lower, setting the entire horizon on fire. Crimson, rose gold, amber, lavender. The red rocks glowed as if lit from within, warm and alive. Lena felt tears gather, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of presence. She whispered, almost to the sky itself, "Thank you." The colors deepened, then softened, then faded into a gentle twilight. The moment lingered in her like a memory from a dream, soft around the edges, unforgettable at the center. Back at the hotel. When she returned to her room, she showered, letting warm water soothe her muscles. Then she curled into the blankets, the desert night breathing quietly outside her window. She closed her eyes and felt the day replay like a soft lullaby. The river,
the stranger's wisdom, the sunset, the whispered truth in her chest. Sedona was working on her, gently, slowly, beautifully. And as she drifted her, gently, slowly, beautifully. And as she drifted into sleep, one thought stayed with her like a warm ember. I'm not the same person who left New York. The early Sedona light drifted through her curtains like a soft watercolor wash, peach, rose, and gold blending together. Her room at El Portal Sedona Hotel felt warm, safe, and deeply quiet. She lay there for a moment, listening to the slow hum of morning. Today was her vortex day. She had read about Sedona's energy vortexes back in New York, how people described them as swirling pockets of spiritual energy, places where clarity settles into the bones, where the earth feels alive beneath your feet. It had always sounded mystical, a bit unreal. But after yesterday's shift by the river, she was ready to believe in small miracles. Morning tea and gentle thoughts. Lena brewed another cup of chamomile from the small tea tray by the window. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug and leaned into the view outside. Red stones catching the first rays of sunlight, birds gliding slowly over the cliffs, the quiet promise of a new day rising. Her journal lay open on the desk. She let the pen move slowly. Today I'll visit Bell Rock. I don't know what I expect, but I want to be open. Maybe the earth speaks in ways the heart understands before the mind does. She closed the journal softly, took a long breath, and smiled. The ride to Bell Rock. She ordered a ride share, and the short drive south toward Bell Rock trailhead felt peaceful. The car windows were slightly cracked, letting in warm desert air scented with juniper and red dust. The driver, a local woman with sun-kissed skin, glanced at her in the mirror. First time in Sedona? Lena nodded. Yes, it's quieter than anywhere I've ever been. The woman chuckled gently. Sedona has a way of giving you only what you need. Some come here looking for answers, some for healing, some just for beauty. The land knows. Lena didn't know what she was looking for yet, but hearing those words settled something in her chest, like she was exactly where she needed to be. Bell Rock, the climb into stillness. She stepped onto the Bell Rock pathway and the sight stopped her. Bell Rock rose in smooth layers of red sandstone, massive and ancient, like a guardian of the desert. Sunlight glowed against its curved edges. The air was warm but not harsh, carrying a quiet buzz of insects and the rustle of dry grass. Every step felt intentional. As she climbed, the earth beneath her boots felt solid and grounding. She moved slowly, pausing often to breathe deeply, to take in the space around her, to let the silence settle inside her. At a small plateau halfway up, she found a flat stone to sit on. A few other travelers sat nearby, some meditating, some journaling, some simply watching the horizon. Lena closed her eyes, and the world softened. She felt warmth rise from the ground, a gentle pulsing presence, like a slow heartbeat. She wasn't sure if it was real or imagined, but it didn't matter. She felt supported, safe, clearer than she had felt in months. Her mind drifted to her life in New York, her tidy office desk, her long subway rides, the feeling of always rushing, the faint ache of loneliness she never quite admitted. Here, sitting on a sun-warmed rock in Arizona, those memories felt distant,
almost like they belonged to someone else. A quiet thought floated in. I want a life that feels like this. She stayed there for a long time, breathing, letting the moment stretch and settle. The conversation in the shade. When the sun climbed higher, she made her way down the trail and stopped at a shaded rest area where a few travelers had gathered. An older man in a wide-brimmed hat nodded at her. "First time at Bell Rock?" "Yes," she said, sitting on a nearby rock. "It's different from anything I've ever felt." He said, "Most people don't feel it their first time, but some of us," he tapped his chest gently, "we're ready for it before we even know we are." Lena looked at him. Ready for what? He smiled in a way that felt both kind and mysterious. To start again. Something in her chest fluttered. He continued, "The vortex doesn't give answers. It just clears the dust so you can see your own." She didn't respond, but somehow he had said exactly what she needed. The afternoon wander. After leaving Bell Rock, Lena walked the quiet shops of uptown Sedona. She visited small metaphysical stores, touched smooth crystals, read tiny handwritten notes on shelves about grounding and intuition. She bought a small rose quartz stone, soft pink and comforting to hold. She stopped at Sedona Memories Bakery Cafe, where she ordered a simple veggie sandwich and lemonade. She sat by the window, feeling the warmth of the sun on her back, thinking about how distant her office lunch breaks felt now. Everything here moved slower, gentler, more human. The evening yoga session. Back at her hotel, she joined a small sunset yoga class held in the courtyard. The instructors spoke softly, guiding breath and movement like a lullaby. When the sun dipped behind the rocks, painting the sky in soft lavender and coral, Lena felt her body melt into the mat. A breeze brushed against her skin, cool and comforting. In the final pose, Shavasana, tears slipped quietly down her temples. Not sadness, release. Something inside her was opening, widening, breathing. Night thoughts and quiet certainty. Later, wrapped in blankets, she wrote again in her journal. Today felt like a beginning. Not sure of what, but I can feel the shape of a new life forming. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere softer. Maybe Sedona. Maybe somewhere else, but I know this. I can't go back to sleepwalking through my days. She closed the journal and turned off the lamp. Outside, the desert held her in its quiet arms, and Lena drifted into sleep with a gentle certainty. I am changing, and it feels right.
Lena woke before her alarm, well-rested, calm, and strangely expectant, as though the day itself had whispered her awake. Early morning light slipped through her curtains in soft gold ribbons, warming the room at El Portal Sedona Hotel. She sat up slowly, savoring the gentle stillness that had become her new routine. No rushing, no subway, no emails buzzing before sunrise. Just quiet breath, warm light, and the sound of her own heartbeat settling into a softer rhythm. Today, she planned to visit one of Sedona's most iconic spiritual places, the Chapel of the Holy Cross, built high into the red cliffs, alone yet embraced by stone, like a sanctuary carved out of the desert's heart. She made her tea,
sat by the window, and opened her journal. Something feels different today. I'm not searching as hard. I want to see what the quiet reveals. She closed the journal and took in a slow, steady breath. The ride through early sunlight. Lena called for a rideshare, and the short drive south took her through winding roads framed by towering red buttes. The sun was rising behind the cliffs, casting soft shadows and illuminating the rocks in glowing orange. Her driver, a soft-spoken man with silver hair, said, "You picked a good time to go. The chapel is best in the morning. Quiet, peaceful. The rocks listen around that place." Lena smiled gently. "Everyone here talks like the land is alive." He chuckled gently. "Oh, it is. Sedona's not a place you just see. It's a place you feel." She looked out the window, heart swelling. He wasn't wrong. Chapel of the Holy Cross, a quiet rising. When Lena stepped out near the chapel, the sight nearly stole her breath. The structure rose straight out of the red rock cliff, sharp, clean lines of modern architecture fused with ancient earth. Its towering windows reflected the morning sky like still water. It felt powerful, sacred, peaceful, all at once. She walked up the winding path toward the chapel's entrance. The air was cool, carrying the faint smell of sun-warmed stone and sage. Every step felt deliberate, grounding. Inside, the chapel was almost silent. A few people sat spaced out on wooden benches. Some prayed. Some simply breathed. Lena took a seat near the window, where warm light spilled across the stone floor. She watched the vast red valley stretching beyond the glass. The mesas, the buttes, the layered cliffs. The view felt like an open palm, holding her, gently. Something inside her loosened. She closed her eyes, and the quiet rose around her, within her, through her. Memories drifted up. Her long days in Manhattan offices, the constant hum of traffic, her strained smile during meetings, her small apartment that felt more like a place she slept than a home. Then newer moments, the river at Red Rock Crossing, Bell Rock's warmth beneath her hands, the stranger saying, "The vortex clears the dust." She inhaled slowly. I needed this more than I knew. A soft conversation with a stranger. As she stood outside the chapel afterward, admiring the valley view, an elderly woman beside her whispered, "Beautiful, isn't it? The kind of beauty that stays with you." Lena nodded. "I don't think I've ever felt anything like this." The woman leaned lightly on her walking stick. "People come here to pray, to heal, to decide, sometimes to let go." Lena stared at the wide open landscape below. "I feel like something is shifting." "It is," she said simply. Sedona has a way of opening doors you didn't know were waiting. Lena felt that sentence settle deep in her chest, warm as sunlight. A slow descent into stillness. She walked slowly back down the chapel path, stopping to touch the warm stone walls, to breathe the clean desert air, to take in the colors: rusty red, dusty gold, soft blue sky stretching endlessly overhead. There was no rush, no schedule, just presence. At the bottom of the path, she paused again, looking back. The chapel seemed even more beautiful from below, small, yet powerful, quiet, yet full of meaning. She whispered, "Thank you," not entirely sure who she was thanking. The land, the moment, herself? Maybe all three. A simple lunch and a soft afternoon. She took a short ride back to uptown Sedona, wandering until she found a quiet spot at the Secret Garden Cafe. She ordered a grilled veggie panini and iced herbal tea, choosing a seat on the shaded patio. Dragonflies drifted between potted plants. The breeze was warm and slow. Voices of other travelers floated softly around her, calm and unhurried. As she ate, she wrote. The chapel felt like a pause in time, like the world stepped aside and said, "Here, breathe." I think maybe I'm learning how to come back to myself. The afternoon draft. After lunch, Lena wandered through small art galleries and crystal shops. She bought a tiny amethyst point that felt cool and soothing in her palm. She didn't need many souvenirs, just small reminders of what she felt here. She returned to her hotel before sunset, taking a warm bath, letting the water relax every tired muscle. Afterward, she sat wrapped in a soft robe near the window, watching the sun sink behind the cliffs like a slow, glowing ember. She felt deeply peaceful, deeply quiet. Nightfall and new understanding. Before bed, she wrote a final journal entry. Today, I didn't climb or hike far, but somehow I traveled deeper than any other day. The chapel showed me something simple. Stillness is a place. 2. And I want more of it in my life. Maybe the real journey isn't the miles I travel, but the space I make inside myself. She closed the journal gently.
Lena woke to a morning painted in soft golden light, filtered through her curtains at El Portal Sedona Hotel. The desert seemed to stretch endlessly outside her window, quiet, warm, and expectant. Today, she had planned something different, a guided jeep tour through Sedona's red rock canyons, a way to see the vast landscape from new angles, and perhaps feel the desert in motion. She dressed in comfortable hiking clothes, leggings, breathable tee, a windbreaker, and tied her hair back in a braid. Her journal and a water bottle were tucked in her day pack. Breakfast was light, yogurt with honey and fresh fruit from the hotel's small cafe. The Jeep tour begins. The tour company, Pink Jeep Tours, greeted her with cheerful smiles and rugged vehicles ready for the rocky terrain. Lena climbed into a 4-seat Jeep, the open sides promising an immersive desert experience. Her guide, a young man named Raphael, greeted her warmly. Ready to see Sedona like most people never do? Lena nodded, her heart already lifting with anticipation. As they drove off, the Jeep bounced slightly over the desert trail. She felt every rise and fall, every twist in the path, the hum of the engine beneath her. Around her, the red rocks rose like towering sentinels, Bell Rock, Courthouse Butte, and other majestic formations whose names she had yet to learn. The air smelled faintly of sagebrush and sun-baked stone. Every gust of wind seemed to carry the memory of centuries of desert quiet, the heart of the canyons. Raphael slowed as they reached Broken Arrow Trail, one of Sedona's most scenic routes. Lena pressed her hands against the roll bar, feeling the Jeep's vibrations through her fingertips. The cliffs glowed in brilliant oranges and crimson reds, their contours softened by morning shadows. "This area," Raphael said softly, "is special. Some call it a vortex site too. People say it's a place to clear your mind and connect with yourself." Lena nodded silently. She didn't need to speak. Her heart already felt the echo of the land's stillness. They paused on a flat plateau. Raphael helped her out. She stepped onto the stone, feeling the heat of the sun-warmed rock beneath her boots. Around her, the canyon stretched endlessly. The desert felt alive and vast, yet incredibly intimate at the same time. She closed her eyes, letting the wind brush her face. The red rocks were quiet, but somehow spoke in whispers of eternity, patience, and grounding. Lena felt her thoughts slow. Her chest expand with calm, a moment of reflection. She sat cross-legged on the rock, pen ready in her journal. The pages were already full of experiences, but she felt compelled to capture this moment too. The desert moves differently when you're part of it. Not fast, not loud, just steady and patient. The rocks hold the history of everything and nothing, and I feel small, yet exactly where I belong. I feel quiet, present, free. She wrote slowly, savoring the rhythm of her pen against the paper. Each stroke mirrored the slow, unhurried movement of the desert itself. The Jeep rides on. They wound through narrow rock passages and expansive canyon overlooks. At one point, the Jeep climbed a ridge, and Lena leaned forward, breath-catching. Below, the valley opened like a sea of red waves. The sun had climbed higher, casting deep shadows that added depth to the terrain. Raphael drove with care, climbed higher, casting deep shadows that added depth to the terrain. Raphael drove with care, pointing out hidden crevices, natural arches, and tiny desert flowers clinging to the rock. Lena felt a sense of awe she hadn't realized she was missing in her daily life back in New York. A quiet pause at a vortex overlook. The Jeep came to a stop at a small clearing known as Submarine Rock, another vortex site. Few other travelers were present, making it almost private. Lena stepped out, inhaling the dry, fragrant air. She walked to the edge and gazed over the canyon, letting the stillness fill her completely. She raised her arms slightly, feeling energy radiate through her body, steady, warm, and grounding. She whispered softly, almost to the rocks themselves, "I'm ready for the life I want. I'm ready to feel this every day, even when I leave." The sun, bright but gentle, warmed her skin. The desert breeze swirled around her like a soft embrace,
In that moment, Lena realized that the desert had already begun to reshaping her, softly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. Return to town and evening calm. As the Jeep returned to uptown Sedona, Lena felt pleasantly exhausted but deeply fulfilled. She walked slowly back to her hotel, taking the time to notice small details: a red rock wall glowing in the late afternoon sun, a bird darting across the sky, the whisper of wind through the trees. Back at El Portel, she poured herself a cup of tea, stepped onto her balcony, and watched the red rocks turn a deeper, muted crimson as the sun began to set. The sky faded from gold to soft paint to twilight purple. She journaled one final thought for the day. Today, the desert moved me in ways I didn't know were possible. I feel lighter. I feel clearer. I feel like myself again. Maybe this is what I've been waiting for all along. Wrapped in a blanket, sipping her tea, Lena closed her eyes. The red rocks glowed quietly beneath the deepening sky, and she allowed herself to drift into sleep, held by the stillness of Sedona, ready for whatever the desert had planned for tomorrow.
Lena woke to another quiet morning, the soft light of Sedona filtering through her window at El Portal Sedona Hotel. She felt rested, but also alert in a way that surprised her, like the desert had begun to realign her body, mind, and spirit. After a slow stretch and a few minutes of mindful breathing, she prepared a light breakfast: toast, fresh fruit, and a small cup of herbal tea. Today, she planned to visit Slide Rock State Park, a short drive northwest from Sedona's town center, to experience the flowing waters of Oak Creek and perhaps let go of lingering thoughts she hadn't yet released. The drive to Slide Rock. The drive was peaceful, framed by towering red cliffs, sparse desert vegetation, and distant mountain silhouettes. She followed Highway 89A, the road winding gently through Oak Creek Canyon. The air carried hints of pine and wet stone from the creek below, a subtle change from the dry desert scent she had grown used to. She felt a quiet anticipation, not excitement, but a soft curiosity, like the desert had begun to realign her body, mind, and spirit. When she arrived, the parking lot was already filling with morning visitors. Families, solo hikers, couples, and other travelers drawn to the park's natural water slides. Lena grabbed her backpack and water bottle, slipped on her sturdy shoes, and walked toward the creek, the sound of flowing water growing louder with each step. The flowing creek. Oak Creek glimmered in the morning light, weaving through smooth red rocks, sparkling like liquid amber. The water was cool, inviting, and soothing. Lena removed her shoes and dipped her toes in, shivering at first, then sighing as her body adjusted to the crisp current. She let herself sit on a sun-warmed boulder beside the creek, watching the water dance and ripple over natural rock slides. Each movement of the creek reminded her of impermanence: the constant flow, the quiet erosion, the endless change that shaped the world and everything in it. Maybe I'm like the creek, she thought, always moving, shaping myself as I go. Moments of reflection. Lena closed her eyes, letting the sound of flowing water fill her ears. She focused on her breath, matching the rhythm of the creek. In, out, in, out. Her journal rested nearby. But for a long while, she didn't write. She just listened. She noticed the soft hum of the creek, the call of a distant bird, the warmth of the sun on her shoulders. She thought of New York, the noise, the stress, the relentless pace. Here, by Oak Creek, all of it felt like another lifetime. She realized she didn't need to carry those weights anymore. Not here, not in this moment. Sliding into play. After a while, she noticed the natural water slides formed by smooth rock formations. Children and adults alike were sliding down into the pools with laughter and delight.
She smiled at the simple joy and after a moment's hesitation, decided to try it herself. She placed her hands on the slick rock, pushed gently, and let the water carry her down into a shallow pool with a soft splash. The cool water embraced her, washing away the heaviness she hadn't even realized she was still holding. She laughed softly, a quiet bubbling sound, feeling freer than she had in years.
Lena woke to another gentle morning in Sedona.
Symbolic,
The soft,
letting
amber
go, moving forward, embracing the current of life rather than resisting it. A quiet picnic. Later, Lena found a shaded spot by the creek and unpacked a simple picnic: fresh fruit, a granola bar, and water. She sat cross-legged on a flat rock, watching sunlight glitter on the water and listening to the peaceful rhythm of the creek. She wrote in her journal, "Slide rock feels like the world reminding me to let go, to release what I no longer need, to trust the flow. The creek moves without hesitation, without doubt. Maybe that's how I should move too." She paused and closed her eyes, imagining the creek carrying her old worries downstream, leaving her lighter, calmer, and more present. Evening calm and reflection. As the sun began to dip behind the canyon walls, Lena reluctantly left Slide Rock. She stopped briefly to watch the golden light reflecting on the creek, knowing the memory of this moment would stay with her. Back at her hotel, she took a warm shower, letting the sensations of the creek linger on her skin and in her mind. She dressed in soft clothes, brewed a calming cup of tea, and sat on her balcony overlooking the red rocks. The sky transitioned from gold to pink to deep purple, the cliffs glowing softly in the twilight. Lena felt her chest open, her mind quiet, and a gentle smile formed on her lips. She journaled one last time before bed. "Today, I let go. Not just of the day, but of the weight I've carried for too long. Sedona is teaching me that life flows, and I can flow too. Maybe this is what I've been looking for all along, a place to return to myself." The desert night wrapped around her like a soft, protective blanket. She drifted into sleep, cradled by the gentle presence of the red rocks, the flowing creek, and the quiet certainty that tomorrow would bring new discoveries, both of the land and of herself.
Lena woke to another gentle morning in Sedona, the soft, amber sunlight spilling into her room at El Portal Sedona Hotel. Today was her last full day in the desert. There was a quiet bittersweetness in the air. She didn't want to leave, yet she felt a deep readiness to carry what she had learned back with her. She dressed in comfortable layers for a hike, leggings, long-sleeve tee, and a fleece jacket, and tied her hair back. Breakfast was simple: a cup of herbal tea and a granola bar, eaten slowly while looking out over the glowing red cliffs. Her plan for the day: Cathedral Rock, Sedona's iconic formation known for its striking silhouette, steep ascent, and one of the most powerful vortex sites in the region. The morning drive to Cathedral Rock. Lena drove along Highway 179, the desert unfolding around her in layers of gold, copper, and crimson. The early sun caught the cliffs in a warm embrace, making the rock formations glow like they were on fire from within. She parked at the Cathedral Rock trailhead, noting the few cars scattered in the lot. Unlike the busy tourist spots in other parts of the world, Sedona felt alive but never crowded. The trail began gently enough, winding through low desert shrubs and clusters of juniper trees. The air smelled of warm stones, sage, and soft desert dust. Birds flitted between the branches, singing their quiet morning songs. The ascent. The trail gradually steepened, becoming a series of rocky steps and narrow ledges. Lena paused often, catching her breath, feeling the strain in her muscles, and appreciating every glance of the surrounding landscape. With each step, the red rocks seemed to rise around her, more massive and awe-inspiring.
The view of the valley below stretched endlessly, layers of mesas, buttes, and cliffs blending into a tapestry of warm colors. The higher she climbed, the more she felt the energy of the place. Cathedral Rock wasn't just a formation, it was a presence, a quiet, grounding, ancient force. She reached a small ledge halfway up and rested, sitting cross-legged and letting the wind brush her face. She closed her eyes, breathing in the air of the desert, feeling the pull of the vortex beneath her. The rocks aren't just stone, they're patience, strength, stillness, presence. With the final scramble, Lena reached the summit. She paused to take in the view. Sedona stretched endlessly in every direction. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of pink, orange, and lavender. She sat on a flat rock, letting the warmth of the stone seep into her legs. Around her, the wind whispered softly, carrying the scent of juniper and desert sage. She opened her journal, writing slowly. Cathedral Rock holds me, not in words, not in motion, but in presence. The sun paints the cliffs, the wind sings softly, and I feel complete. Not perfect, not fixed, not everything figured out, just present, just here. She let the pen rest and closed her eyes. The desert seemed to breathe with her, steady and patient. She reflected on the past week, Bell Rock's gentle pulse, Oak Creek's flowing water, Slide Rock's liberation, the quiet of the chapel, and the jeep ride through canyons. Every step, every view, every still moment had softened something inside her. She could feel it, small shifts in her chest, lightening her mind, opening her heart. A quiet promise. As the sun sank lower, Lena whispered into the wind, I will carry this with me. The stillness, the flow, the presence. I will not forget how it feels to breathe, to slow, to simply be. She watched the shadows grow longer, the cliffs deepening in color, and the sky fading to deep indigo above the rising crescent moon. A few stars blinked faintly, and the world felt endless and intimate all at once. She knew tomorrow she would leave Sedona, return to New York, return to routine. But she also knew she wasn't leaving empty-handed. She had learned something profound. Life could move gently, fully, and beautifully if she let it. And she could bring a piece of this desert calm back with her, carrying it quietly inside. The descent and reflection. Slowly, Lena began her descent, savoring each step. The rocks beneath her feet were steady, grounding her. She paused at familiar ledges, touching warm stone and breathing deeply. By the time she reached the trailhead, the sky was painted in the deep hues of twilight, and the first stars appeared. She lingered for a moment, looking back at Cathedral Rock, glowing quietly in the last light. Her heart was full, her mind was calm, her spirit quiet but awake, ready for the world beyond the desert. Back at El Portal Sedona, she poured herself a warm cup of tea, wrapped in a blanket, and wrote her final journal entry for the day. Sedona has changed me, not in grand gestures, but in the smallest, quietest ways. I came here seeking space, clarity, and calm. I leave with all of that and more. I feel lighter, freer, and more myself than I have in years. Thank you, desert. I will return in spirit, if not in body. She closed her journal, set the cup beside her, and let herself drift into a deep, restorative sleep, cradled by the red rocks, the desert night, and the quiet certainty that the journey had just begun.
Lena woke to the soft, gentle glow of early morning sunlight filtering through her El Portal Sedona hotel window. The desert outside was quiet, still holding the night's cool embrace. Today was her last morning in Sedona, and a calm melancholy settled over her. She moved slowly, savoring the routine she had come to love, stretching her body, making a cup of chamomile tea, and sitting by the window to watch the desert awaken. The red rocks caught the first hints of sunlight, glowing softly like embers in a quiet fire. She picked up her journal, knowing this entry would mark the closing of one chapter and the quiet anticipation of the next. This morning, everything feels slower, softer, more deliberate. Sedona has shown me the spaces between moments, the pauses, the stillness, the breathing. I feel it in my chest, in my bones, in my heart. I don't want to leave, and yet I know that this calm can travel with me. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the warm liquid anchor her to the moment. A last walk through the hotel courtyard garden. Before checking out, Lena wandered one last time through the hotel's courtyard garden. The desert flora glowed in the morning sun, bright desert marigolds, prickly pear cacti dotted with tiny blooms, and soft desert grasses swaying in the breeze. Birds called softly from the juniper trees. She paused by a small stone fountain, listening to the quiet trickle of water. The moment felt like a farewell, a gentle reminder that even in leaving, she could carry this calm and presence inside her. She knelt, placing her hand briefly on the cool stone of the fountain. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The wind stirred around her, soft and comforting, as if the desert itself had answered. Back in her room, Lena packed her belongings slowly, deliberately. She folded her clothes, tucked her journal into her backpack, and placed her small souvenirs, a rose quartz stone, amethyst, and a few pressed flowers, carefully in her bag. Her thoughts drifted over the week's adventures. Bell Rock and its grounding vortex, where she first felt the pull of clarity. Oak Creek and the flowing river, teaching her how to release what no longer served her. Slide Rock State Park, where the cool water washed away the weight of old burdens. The Chapel of the Holy Cross, a silent sanctuary of stillness. The Jeep ride through the red canyons, a lesson in moving with presence. Cathedral Rock at sunset, where she had felt completion, reflection, and hope. She realized that each moment had been a teacher, each rock, river, and canyon a silent companion in her journey back to herself. The drive out of Sedona. Lena stepped into her rental car, the engine humming softly beneath her feet. She set Highway 89A as her route, following the winding road out of the desert. As the red cliffs receded into the distance, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The sun had risen higher now, painting the landscape in warm gold and soft crimson. She felt a quiet gratitude swell within her. "I'll carry this with me," she thought. The calm, the clarity, the presence. Sedona doesn't have to end here. The drive was reflective and gentle. Each turn in the road revealed new angles of the canyons, new light and new shadows. She imagined herself returning home with the lessons of the desert quietly nestled in her heart. A last pause before the road. Before leaving the canyon entirely, Lena pulled over at a small overlook. She stepped out,
letting the morning air brush her face. The desert stretched endlessly before her, layered cliffs glowing softly. She closed her eyes, taking one last deep breath. The scent of warm stone, desert flora, and distant pine. She let it fill her lungs, her chest, her heart. "I am ready," she whispered. "I am present. I am calm. I will carry this forward." For a moment, she simply stood, letting the silence wrap around her like a soft, protective blanket. Heading home, carrying Sedona within. The rest of the drive was quiet, meditative. When she eventually arrived at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, she parked the car, carrying her bag and memories with care. Sedona had taught her more than she could have imagined: stillness, flow, presence, release, and self-discovery. As she boarded her airplane back to New York City, she felt a gentle clarity she hadn't known before. The world outside Sedona might be busy, loud, and demanding, but she could bring a piece of this calm with her. She gazed out the airplane window, watching the red rocks fade into the horizon, and she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you, Sedona. I will never forget you, and I am ready to live differently now." The plane lifted into the sky, carrying Lena home, but the desert remained with her, quietly, deeply, in the soft spaces between her thoughts, in her steady breath, and in the unfolding of her new life. Lena landed at JFK Airport in the late afternoon, the familiar hum of New York City greeting her like an old acquaintance. The energy was different from Sedona's quiet presence, frenetic, layered, loud, but she felt ready to meet it with a new awareness. She collected her bag and took a taxi home, noticing the small details along the way that she had never fully seen before: the way sunlight reflected off glass towers, the gentle rustle of leaves in the park, the faint aroma of roasted coffee drifting from a street corner cafe. Even in the familiar chaos, she felt a new sense of grounding. The apartment revisited. Walking into her apartment, Lena paused at the door, taking in the space that once felt lonely. It was the same small apartment, same furniture, same view, but now it felt different. She placed her bag down and let her journal spill open on the table. She began writing, "I am home, but I am not the same. The city is loud, but I can breathe within it. The routines, the deadlines, the noise, I can meet them with calm, presence, and intention. Sedona taught me that stillness is not a place, it's a practice." She set a few of her Sedona souvenirs on the windowsill: the rose quartz, the amethyst, and the pressed flowers. They were reminders not just of the journey she had taken, but of the inner journey she had begun. Seeing the city differently. Over the next few days, Lena walked to work instead of rushing on the subway. She lingered in small parks, felt the sunlight on her face during lunch breaks, and practiced the breathing and mindfulness exercises she had cultivated in Sedona. She noticed the little things she had once overlooked: the warmth of a barista's smile, the flutter of pigeons in the park, the soft hum of the city in the evening. The world was the same, but she was different: slower, more present, more attuned to life's quiet rhythms. Her colleagues noticed a subtle shift too. Lena was calmer in meetings, more patient on calls, more thoughtful in her responses. It was as if her internal landscape had expanded, creating space for the city's noise without letting it overwhelm her. Planning the next chapter. One evening, Lena sat by her window with her journal, reflecting on Sedona and her return to New York. She realized that her journey wasn't only about escape, it was about clarity, presence, and intentional living. She wrote, "Sedona gave me the courage to see what I truly want, a slower life, more stillness, time to create, reflect, and breathe. I may be back in the city, but I carry the desert within me. My days can be different. My choices can be intentional, and I am ready to take the first steps." She sketched a small plan: morning meditations, weekend nature walks, journaling each night, and a long-term goal of spending more time in places that nourish her soul. Sedona had been the beginning. Now she would carry its lessons forward. A moment of gratitude. That night, Lena stood by her window, looking out at the city lights. The air smelled faintly of rain and asphalt, of coffee and exhaust. She breathed deeply, feeling a soft sense of gratitude. "Thank you, Sedonan," she whispered. "Thank you for the stillness, the clarity, the courage. I am ready for what comes next." The city's hum didn't feel overwhelming. It felt alive, and she felt alive too. For the first time in years, Lena felt fully present, grounded, calm, and quietly certain that she could navigate life's demands without losing herself. Her journey had begun in the desert, but it didn't end there. It was a lifelong practice to slow down, to be mindful, to let go, and to embrace the quiet spaces within, even amidst the world's chaos. She closed her eyes, letting the city and the memories of Sedona blend together in gentle harmony. And for the first time in a long while, Lena felt completely at peace.
The morning sunlight streamed through Lena's New York apartment windows, warmer somehow than usual, carrying a quiet promise of possibility. She brewed her tea, wrapped her hands around the warm cup, and sat by the window, looking out over the familiar streets that once felt overwhelming, but now seemed alive with subtle beauty. Sedona had changed her, not in grand, dramatic ways, but in the quiet, persistent ways that matter most. She felt the desert's lessons in her chest: stillness, presence, flow, and courage, integrating the journey into daily life. Lena had started small. She woke 15 minutes earlier each morning to meditate. She journaled nightly, recording her thoughts, ideas, and reflections. Walks through nearby parks became sacred rituals, moments of pause in the city's bustle. Her apartment, once just a space to sleep, became a sanctuary. Crystals from Sedona on the windowsill, pressed desert flowers framed on the wall, and soft lighting to create warmth and calm. Even work felt different. The 9-to-5 pace remained, but she met it with patience and clarity. Deadlines were no longer chains. They were tasks, manageable and finite. The noise of emails and meetings no longer unsettled her. She had learned to find stillness amid chaos. Dreaming forward. One evening, she sat with her journal, a soft breeze drifting in through the open window. She wrote slowly, "I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I feel ready. Sedona taught me that life flows, and I can flow too. I want to create. I want to explore. I want to live gently but fully. I don't have all the answers, but I have trust. Trust in myself. Trust in the process. Trust in the quiet guidance of my own heart." Her thoughts wandered to future travels, perhaps returning to Sedona, maybe exploring the Oregon coast, or wandering the forests of New England in autumn. She imagined long hikes, quiet mornings, and the gentle joy of observing life unfold without rushing it. A letter to herself. Lena decided to write a letter to herself, a reminder for the days when city life would feel heavy or the noise too loud. "Dear Lena, remember the stillness of Bell Rock?
the flowing freedom of Oak Creek, the laughter at Slide Rock, and the quiet awe of Cathedral Rock. You carry all of it within you. Life will move fast, but you don't have to. Slow down, breathe, trust yourself, be present. Keep seeking, keep reflecting, keep growing. Sedona is not just a place. You are Sedona now. In your calm, in your presence, in your courage. Love you. She folded the letter and placed it safely in her journal, a treasure she could return to whenever she needed grounding. A quiet evening of gratitude. As the city lights blinked to life outside her window, Lena sipped her tea, feeling gratitude fill her chest. She had come to Sedona seeking clarity and calm, and she had returned with more than she could have imagined. The desert's energy, the stillness of the rocks, the flow of the waters, they were hers now, inseparable from her own heartbeat. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and let herself sink into the moment. She was home in New York, yes, but also home within herself, and that, she realized, was the true journey. The closing thought. Life would continue with its ups and downs, its rush and chaos, its surprises and challenges. But Lena carried the desert with her, in her breath, in her steps, in the gentle patience of her heart. She had learned that travel wasn't just about seeing new places. It was about finding spaces within oneself, quiet spaces that could be carried anywhere. She whispered softly to the night, I am ready. I am calm. I am myself. And with that, Lena let the day end, her soul settled, her heart open, and her spirit quietly alight with the knowledge that every journey, both external and internal, is a gift to be embraced.